Started.
Recording has started.
Okay, so we can start doing the introductions. I think we're still officially waiting for some of our guest speakers. Good evening, everybody. I'm Joan McIntyre, Chair of Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission. Welcome to our November meeting. We are recording this so that it can be shared with the public. If anybody's here on the call that's from the public and wants to make public comment, let me know. And we will start with introductions. Again, I'm Joan McIntyre, Chair of Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission. So Carrie, I'll just kind of go down my list.
Good evening, everyone. Carrie Thompson, Vice Chair of C2E2.
David?
David Evans, Commissioner.
Demetra?
Demetra McBride, Bureau Chief, Office of Sustainability and Environmental Manager.
Eric?
Eric Gibbs, Commissioner.
Jenna?
Jenna Peabody, Air Team, Arlington County Government.
Mark?
Mark Greenwood, Commissioner.
Okay. Michaela?
Michaela Milton, Commissioner.
Rich?
Rich Dooley, Rethink Energy Program Manager for the county.
Rob?
Rob Sandola, Commissioner.
Okay, and Whitney? Whitney? Somebody?
Hi, this is Whitney Fernaldo. I'm just a member of the public.
Okay, great. Did you have any public comments you would want to make?
I don't, just happy to be here.
Okay. Looks like we're still one short of a quorum, and we're supposed to have Ryan. Did you send an email to Ryan? Oh, there's Suzanne. Hey, Suzanne, we're just finishing the introductions.
Hi. Oh, does that mean I need to introduce myself or am I waiting?
Yeah, you can just introduce yourself.
Hi, Suzanne Swink,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Okay. And you make the quorum. Jenna,
Hey, Joan,
did you?
I'm sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you. I saw an email. Was Kevin Vincent able to sign in? He sent an email and Rob sent him a response.
Okay. Yeah, and you can let him know. He can go to the website. The link there is working.
Yeah, I had the same problem.
Joan, could I get Ryan's last name?
Ryan Delaney. Did you get a did you send him an email with the link?
No. And I'll contact him and Bill.
Okay.
I just saw an email from Bill. He's having the same problem with the link.
Okay. Yeah, I want to try to get them.
I ended up going in over the website.
Yeah, that's what I did that to start with. Seemed to be as easy a way as anything to get on. So we will give people maybe a few more minutes. There's Kevin.
Jenna, I'm seeing your screen twice here.
Hello.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, we've got
Do
Bill
you have
here.
your quorum?
Yeah, we do have our quorum,
Okay.
and so I don't see Ryan here. So why don't we kind of leave that for later, and we can just jump right into looking at updating the 2024 plans and priorities, and then that will easily, I think, segue into our discussion with Bill. So what I thought would do might be is a kind of a way of thinking about this issue is just kind of go around and have the commissioners each kind of say what they think their kind of priority, what they think should be a top priority, or what they would like to see accomplished in 2024. So again, kind of working down the list, Carrie?
Yeah, I guess mine is two-part, but they're associated. One is supporting the county to prepare a strong update to the Green Building Incentive Plan, and also improving C2E2's participation in the SPRCs, including the efficiency of our participation and our impact.
Okay, thanks. David?
Yeah, I'd like to see us really move towards updating the CEP and moving on to what we might think of more as a climate action plan than an energy plan.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that's going to fit into the whole overall agenda, but that seems to me to be the number one topic that I'd like to follow on.
Great. All right, Elizabeth? Elizabeth, you're muted. There we go.
I'm so sorry, guys. I did not hear the question that was being asked.
Yeah, just kind of everybody's, what would you see your top priority for 2024?
Certainly in the energy sphere, I'm still very interested in the community choice aggregation possibility. That would be my top priority. I was interested in the forestry plan and tree canopy, and bus electrification and vehicle electrification and charging is a third priority.
Okay. Eric?
I would simply endorse Carrie's green buildings and David's climate action plan. I think that a climate action plan for Arlington is indispensable and would, I mean, I just think that is something that's frankly overdue at this point and should be a high priority. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Kevin?
Yeah, I'd like to see, following up on the appointment of the climate officer, the actual systemic integration of plans across all county operations to go zero emission. I mean, we have a lot of really good examples of where it's happening, but it's not just embedded in the entire Arlington government system, and it needs to be. So I'm talking county operations here. That's something that we can directly advise on and control, and I'd like to see us continue focus on that.
Great. Okay, and Michaela? I'm sorry, Mark.
I guess I would say, consistent with the theme of having a climate action plan, I would like to see us filling out, in a sense, some action items on heat island effects and stormwater, and really try to incorporate more of that in our SPRC activities, because that's really our, at this point, strongest point of leadership.
Right. Let's see, Michaela.
Yeah, I guess just adding to what others have said, and adding the environment portion of our name and following up with things like the implementation of the forestry natural resource plan, stormwater projects such as the Gulf Branch stream project, and what Mark said about Heat Island and night sky compliant lighting and such.
And let's see, Rob.
Yeah, I'd like to second again Carrie's note on updating the SPRT checklist and making sure that we have impact with our letters, and we can document the changes that are being made by the developers, especially regarding green buildings and development. I also see on here we have some capitalizing on the budget cycle opportunities, and to me that's a key way to really have some influence for this commission is to strategize about ways we can impact capital improvement plan budgets.
Thank you, Stephen.
I'd like to see us continue to work on green space equity. I'd also, kind of hard to put into words, but when we provide comments on things like SPRCs and other kinds of building plans, if we can find a way to provide our commentary a little bit sooner. Sometimes it feels like we do things in, trying to talk about the environment and they've already made decisions, or they kind of stave us off until like a certain meeting, and that's the only time that we get. So if there's any way we can improve our ability to provide comments, that would be great.
Great. Okay. Suzanne.
Hi, thanks, Joan. I would echo the comments that others have already made about the importance of Arlington moving forward with a climate action plan. And the one that I would add is I really want to make sure that the county is evaluating and attempting to take advantage of any number of the funding streams that are coming out of the federal side of government, both from the IRA as well as the infrastructure bill.
Mm.
I'm sorry, Suzanne, there was a freeze point there for me. You cut off at taking advantage of any of the number of
any of the funding streams from the federal government, from the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the infrastructure bill, right? So all of the funding that's flowing out to different states and municipalities, I want to make sure that Arlington is evaluating and appropriately applying for the ones that could work for us.
Okay, and for me, I think, working with other commissions, other organizations in the community to start to build more of a broad consensus of what we mean by climate action. And because it seems to me that, we seem to be approaching the same issue from so many different perspectives. It came out, in the meeting we had with where the Transportation Commission and others were in there, and there's as well, we deal with climate change by getting people out of their car and not electrification. But, kind of thinking, and this gets into the kind of whole of government approach as well as really whole of community, is how does climate change actually fit in with what we do as a community, what we do is what the county does to advance it as an integral part, and probably working with that better understanding of what equity is within this context, because I think, we've talked about it in very general terms, but, kind of understanding what it actually means specifically for Arlington. So, anybody final comments, and then maybe we can just turn to our planning document and look at that.
Hey, Joan.
Kind of go through it. Yeah.
Do you mind if I just respond to a couple of the items, just to give you context for your deeper discussions on this?
Okay, briefly,
real quick.
Okay.
Green building program update. The reason that that's been put on hold is we did a briefing with the county manager, but I've gotten instruction that we're probably going to have to wait for briefings with the board until after the 1st of January, because they've decided, not surprisingly, to push this issue to the 2 new board members coming on. In terms of the climate action plan, know that the years 3 through 5 roadmap is being expanded to cover all of the very specific areas like heat island effects, waste management, green infrastructure that aren't currently very fulsome in the CEP or there at all. And that the inventory, the greenhouse gas inventory is going to be updated for the fiscal year 23, because particularly if we're moving to a climate action plan, going for the earlier COVID years is misrepresentative for obvious reasons. In the meantime, though, we're also working forward through the roadmap, and also we're continuing. It's not that work isn't going to be going on all through 24, because we're looking at integrating no regrets measures from a consumption-based inventory strategy list. And as for the federal government and equity, we have been working for a full year. We've already been received 1 grant award under the federal grants. We're waiting to hear the state actually wants to fund another, is interested in talking about funding a second one. We're submitting a third one tomorrow morning, first thing, or actually tonight. And there are 3 other in play that deal with the Climate Pollution Reduction Fund and also the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and green banks. We also have the NREL project, et cetera. And as far as equity goes, know that we're already working with, obviously our Office of Racial Equity at the county, working with the environmental equity section of the NRDC in DC, working with the Arlington chapter of the NAACP, and obviously working with a number of nonprofits and faith-based organizations. So we can tell you more on that lately, and we can give you a more fulsome rundown of our federal grant activity at a future meeting.
And Cindy, you joined us late. We were just kind of going around the room virtually, so to speak, to talk about, what we think our priorities should be. What you think the key priorities should be?
Right. Well, I thought that the list looked good. I like a lot of what there is. So yeah, I'm supportive. I mean, climate change.
Okay.
But
yeah. So clearly a good focus for all of us in terms of, kind of focusing fairly broadly on climate change and whole of government approach as part of this. And then also some of our own processes and procedures to make sure that we're actually as effective as we can. Jenny, you want to make that a little larger so we can all, maybe just a tad larger than that. Okay. I think it needs to be a bit smaller because I think some of it went off the screen.
Right.
hard to get it just right.
Okay. So on the first one, I was looking at it this afternoon. Should have gotten to it earlier, but I keep getting distracted. So I did kind of think that maybe we wanted to, make that a little bit more specific in terms of what we're looking to achieve and actually tie it much more directly to, the climate crisis and what the climate scientists are saying that we have to do in order to avoid the worst damages. So, anybody have any other thoughts on any of these three priorities? Yes.
So this is Cindy. So doesn't Arlington have, should we tie it to Arlington's own goals? Because the frustration I have is when I go forward and they're approving all of these projects that are out of line with their goals. The IPCC, Arlington has adopted its own goals and it's struggling. It's difficult, but it's struggling to.
Right. There's a big disconnect between what the long-term goals are. So,
Well, these are more ambitious, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's it's aspirational, and reminding everybody where we need to be. But Cindy raises a good point. We're having difficulty staying on track with the somewhat less ambitious Arlington goal.
right,
Maybe.
right. Or just the fact that none of the plans that we've seen lately really fully integrate climate action. We ran into this with certainly the Langston Boulevard plan. It made a few nods, but it wasn't an integral aspirational aspect of really defining what, kind of a green Main Street is within the context of climate change. So,
I like this. Go ahead.
So I was just going to suggest that maybe we name both here rather than choosing them like in line with levels in Arlington. I mean, we're trying to make the county meet its own targets as a minimal level, but then we're, as I said, aspirational to IPCC. So in line with targets in existing county plans and beyond. You can wordsmith it, but you could name both the existing county plans, energy plan, et cetera.
Well, what I noticed about the way it's worded is that what is being modified by the 2030 plans is the advice and guidance we give. And I don't think we should limit our guidance, right?
Carrie, in that regard, I think you saw recently the sub breakdown of the greenhouse gas emissions and the source, the sub breakdown in subsectors. And buildings are obviously by far running away our greatest source. So,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I think we refer to that later on. So do we want to add in here is in line with Arlington County goals as well as targets for the 2030 and beyond for the IPCC? I mean, to me, it's these IPCC targets that are most important, that the county should, because even like the CEP is 2050 with no real targets in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. In between, they have some for renewable energy.
I think we should leave it as is, honestly.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is priority of this is the real high level. And then our next level of detail is the next section. So anything on the climate justice or resilience? Okay, so I'm not hearing anything, so we can kind of move on to the next level. And, okay. Oh, let's go back. Don't go through quite that fast, Jenna. Give us a chance to. Okay. So on the first three.
Hey, Joan, I'm not sure that the full process on the climate action plan would be complete within the calendar year. There's a lot of activity going on, don't get me wrong.
Well, I think one of the things that we have to think about in terms of looking forward to is that, I mean, if we're going to wait for, 18 months for a client, we've just lost 18 months of doing anything. I mean,
No,
I'm
I don't
not,
think, well,
if
yeah.
we're looking for more ambition to what we're doing now. So I think, it's kind of balancing of, how much, effort goes into a climate action plan as opposed to goes into, kind of moving forward with a common consensus of what the key actions need to be and what the steps are the county should be taking.
I'm just,
So,
offering that the roadmap is a really robust, detailed, accountable, measurable place for an enormous amount of work to be done. Just that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And I added in this one section on kind of building reuse, getting at the kind of embedded overall, getting a little bit more focus than we've had on just the embedded carbon, and making sure that we repurpose buildings where it makes sense, or at least reuse the materials in them, and then are using materials that either use recycled materials or are low carbon or even negative carbon.
I like that.
I like that.
All right. And then action on ourself is just relooking at the whole SPRC checklist. Do we want to add something in there specifically about process? Something like.
Do you mean the process?
Well,
Yeah, in
our
what sense?
SPRC, just, reassess the, our process, our SPRC engagement process.
Yeah. Why don't we say checklist and engagement process?
Could you add that in, Jenna? Scroll up a bit. Where at the.
There.
Right.
You got it.
Yeah, right. Update. Yeah, your cursor was just there. Okay.
Oh no, it was already there. So right after checklist in the bullet that follows, you could just say and process. Right after right there. Good.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's the budget, and then this year next year will be a biennial year, so they'll be relooking at the CIP. So again, that will be a key area where we can engage in. And one thing that we have pushed for over, with the last cycles is that, there's not a lot of transparency. So they'll talk about, kind of building renovation, but they won't provide any details. And there's no accounting for, how it's going to contribute to meeting the goals for the CEP. So it's like, okay, they're going to renovate this building, but are they going to replace it with an electric system or a gas system? And so, the things that get buried in the details. And since we keep running into county projects that continue to use gas for both new buildings and renovations, that, kind of focusing on that.
Joan, I had a comment at the top on the just generalized for this whole column on the how. In some cases, it's pretty clear on the actions that we're going to do, but in some cases, we're trying to influence the county staff. In some cases, the board, and in some cases, even the general public on certain activities. And so, in this case, let's say just take the budget example in the SIP. So, would that take the form of drafting letters to the board, or trying to get out in front, working with the budget staff on what's included in the SIP budget? Like that. I mean, I know we don't want to get too detailed in here, but I also feel like in order for us to assess.
Yeah, it actually is a little bit of all of the above. Usually, at least the county manager will have a meeting with commission chairs or commission representatives as we get into the budget. They also often sometimes do a public survey. So that's kind of a first element. And then we usually get to make comments at the work sessions on when they're talking about the elements that they've decided are primarily climate related. So again, and then we'll do a letter, so that kind of gets at the all of the above. So it's kind of looking, is any words here that aren't specific enough?
Yeah, I mean, you could look at any of them, like,
Yeah.
you know, urge creation of a climate action. Like, so when we urge create, what is that in the form of a letter to county staff? And, you know, like what, it's just making the actions actionable. And but if it's clear enough here for most people, we don't need to make any adjustments here. I don't want to get us off track, but for me, at least for some of these actions, I think back and, you know, a year from now, we're going to say, were we successful in taking this action or in influencing this particular policy set? And for me, it's hard to say a definitive yes on some of these.
Well, our most common tool that we have at our disposal is writing letters to the county board. So letters is right up there, but also taking opportunities to speak at board meetings. That's a second. And Joan, what other actions?
We do. I mean, you know, where there's big policies being developed, you know, they come to the commission and we can talk about it and engage. Right. And usually kind of like, we'll talk about the solid waste committee letter later this evening. You know, we kind of engage more specifically.
Verbally,
you know, we engage directly with the staff on that one, and kind of more interactions, and some like the forestry and natural resources plan, and then certainly the implementation of that. We're participating in the ENERGAG, which is the Natural Resources Joint Advisory Group, which consists of a few members from several commissions. So again, and actually very interactive with the staff there on some of these issues. So kind of multiple strategies. What I would propose is maybe if you and one other person, after we get through this, can do that iteration of looking at the action words and make sure it's kind of reflected, you know, those words. And that way we don't have to, you know, kind of spend time going through each one of these to make sure it's got that precision of, you know, how do we know at the end of the year we've kind of, I mean, with the climate action goal, if they agree to do, you know, move towards that, or we can say that, you know, everything pulled together consists of a real climate action plan for the county, then I think, you know, we can chalk it up. It's the intermediate one, is where did we make progress, even if it wasn't as far as we wanted to go.
Yeah, and maybe that's a whole separate conversation on kind of our own internal metrics, what we're tracking as well too, because just because they came out of plan, like to the extent that, you know, the letters on, for example, a development through the SPRC process, even what we just talked about, Joan, on the Red Lion, and some of the changes that they're going to make just based on some side conversations that we had, those are the little things that are actually leading to potential changes, and not just our end of year report is not that we wrote the letter, it's that they actually changed their plans to, you know, and to electrify more. That's the outcome
or you know, or sometimes it's almost not, well, maybe this project didn't, but because we're constantly talking about it, you know, we're getting and everybody and planning commission and other members are actually asking the same questions. I mean, to me, some of this is a process, and you know, what we'd really like is everybody to say, yeah, this is brilliant, why didn't we think of this, and just go do it. But you know, that's not the reality of where things are. But I do think, useful, and maybe that's, and maybe there's just a second, a slightly, you know, something to add to this, or something that kind of gets at, you know, how we actually measure our progress and what. And again, we do an annual report, so we can use that as an opportunity to kind of think, and we'll have that looked at, you know, by January.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay.
Hey,
All right.
Joan, I was going to add the planning commission because I do note that in your comments to the planning commission, I know that a lot of that was the work of letters and other contacts. But there were members on the planning commission that in their comments before the vote on Plan Langston Boulevard were directly incorporating recommendations that you made from.
Yeah. And so that they did have a motion to ask the county board to direct that, they prioritize repurposing buildings. I don't think the board went through, but we got the message through all the way up the chain that this, and sometimes it's just, people aren't even thinking of these things unless we're making a point of it.
This may take more work than we have anybody available to do, but one way that might really help in writing end of year reports is using this priorities and activities and keep track of letters sent, feedback given, testimony provided, so that at the end of the year we can see what we actually did, the more specific actions and activities, and whether we think that that affects.
And we can account for a lot of that. Well, at least usually we keep the counting of how many letters we sent. Yeah. And usually most letters are followed up with testimony in front of the board. So. Okay, you want to keep scrolling? Okay, transport related things. Again, CIP. I'm suggesting dropping the second one. Number one, they've already just passed the transit strategic plan. But, and I think, some of the other suggestions get at more detail. I think some of it will be a case of how do we actually get the county to take these actions? How do they embed it in the transportation master plan or some of the other planning elements, or just actually what they do in the CIP or programs. So, and that's, kind of an area of, we probably want to think of, how we can influence some of the transportation related areas. So, you want to scroll down a little bit, Jenna? Final one, I think we kind of captured that elsewhere, or it might have been something that got moved. Yeah. Now, one thing I had a question about is on the electric vehicle acquisition and charging infrastructure. I mean, it's still important, but this is actually, I think, something the county is kind of doing anyway. And if we're looking at this as a priority. I mean, I'm comfortable with it. It just
you're thinking about deprioritizing it because we don't need to push the county. Is that your point? Yeah, that's kind of my point, is it seems to be, doing pretty well on its own. I mean, it don't have any, again, priorities at some point, if you've got too many of them. But don't feel strongly either way. I mean, I do think it's, it's an important direction. It's just one that seems like we're making probably some of the better progress.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly a lot of good news now. I just, I'm a little bit worried about because this is so long term.
Mm-hmm.
The resting on the laurels problem of we did so well early on, we don't have to push to get the last holdouts.
Yeah.
Kevin, in the carbon transportation and carbon neutral transportation master plan, one of the three main sections is on the county fleet, and they have future core milestones and targets. And it's a breakdown by the passenger vehicles, the medium duty vehicles and the heavy.
And so it's got on all segments going to 100% is the plan.
We have interim milestones and then 100% by a specific date.
Okay, all right. I mean, because
Mhm.
obviously we need interim milestones, which
Yeah,
can't
and
be.
that'll be coming
Okay.
to you guys, obviously.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
well, and we can leave
Okay.
this on. I mean, I not a big issue, not a big thing. It certainly makes it somewhat comprehensive that we're looking at everything. And since our point is that this is never a kind of either or, it's almost an all of above on things that need to be done. Yeah. Okay, kind of added in the reference of just in case the CCA doesn't work out, is there something else that can do much the same thing?
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, Joan, just on the installation of renewable energy, and I don't know if I really have an edit to this, but just to point out that the real goal here is not necessarily that we have more and more renewables, but that we have less and less fossil fuel. So certainly exploration of batteries as the cost comes down there and other mechanisms. Maybe in a future year, we think about shifting the emphasis, from renewables to backing down fossil fuels one way or another, because there could be other policy mechanisms that contribute to a reduction in fossil fuel plants running that don't necessarily involve building renewables,
Right.
including
right.
transmission and batteries and
Battery storage.
beneficial
battery, yeah,
electrification. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, the SCC reversed itself and restored the exceptionally high charge on the interconnection fees.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, this is. Is there a question on the electric systems? Somebody looks, it's highlighted here. Yeah, that was Elizabeth.
Yeah, I wonder, Demetra, if you know if the county has any kind of budget devoted to replacing the oldest, most inefficient devices and appliances with new ones, thinking about.
I think Elizabeth, we should kind of double check because there's a little bit of nuance there in the language. I think typically it's end of life appliances and systems. And there's a combination capital improvement program and PAYGO program that parallel track each other. And that's part of the CIP budget.
Okay.
So that is coming before you because we're all working on that now.
Can I ask a question here about the language that says, work with other commissions and community groups to develop a consensus on how climate action is reflected in county priorities? That is potentially very powerful. What do we think that means, and what experiences have we had with that?
Well, I
mean,
think,
I
I have tried to reach out to commission chairs and and actually early this year, I was hoping maybe we could do a joint meeting or something with the Transportation Commission. But it's, at least maybe an occasional meeting with representatives from all. I mean, even broader is something more like the Enerjag related to more energy specific issues. in climate is just, because as I said, it seems to me sometimes, we're at cross purposes as everybody's looking at their priorities. So, the transportation, transit focused people are looking at transit oriented development and, robust primary lines, and they're skipping all the people that, don't find, aren't thinking of, or they're, so they say electrification is just a kind of a distraction. So it in planning commission, again, they look at everything. So, kind of just, if we're just talking to each other in a way of that we're all ultimate, if we're kind of in agreement of how all these things fit in, we can maybe be more powerful. Alexandria did this a year or two ago. And I think it was, they came up with, kind of a joint statement in terms of where they think the city should go.
Okay.
So again, this is, and
I mean,
hopefully as Bill can, we can talk about that with Bill and as a way, but this is kind of just trying to think broadly of, if more people are giving the same message and if everybody's more clear as to how everything fits together.
I mean, even things like tree canopy and stormwater, that other commissions are dealing with, have to do with climate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think that's really the main point. I mean, there's very little that any of the commissions deal with that doesn't have a climate component to it, either in terms of planning for the future or the implications of what's going on. And so for me, some concept like this really captures what I think would be the heart of a climate action plan. And it really involves mucking around in the things that other people think of as their own business in a really systematic way. And I think this idea of working with other commissions as a mechanism to try and affect that result is a really good suggestion, and one that's certainly worth a year's work to try and put together.
Yeah.
Just a reminder that you're the Stormwater Commission.
Yeah, we are the Stormwater Commission, but
Right.
other people have said that to us sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing?
Joan, did you, instead of is, do you mean should be reflected? I mean, are we talking about how it is reflected or how it should be reflected?
Should be reflected.
Should be.
Yeah.
And then I guess the reason I wanted to emphasize, I think it is really important. Because I feel in many contexts that we are on our own.
Yeah.
Or perceived as being on our own.
Right. Yeah.
And, I think this idea of essentially assembling allies for common messages is extremely important.
Yeah. And even making the point of housing is that, yes, it's important to make sure we have a lot of, we increase what affordable housing we have, but one of the ways of getting affordable housing is reducing the energy costs for the residents.
Right. That's a good example.
So again,
I just think we ought to be looking
and planting trees.
A model of this.
Yes.
We can take advantage of this year in 2024 and show that we can do it.
Yeah. Okay. Solid waste plan.
Anyway.
So actually, Joan, I'm wondering if this is where it belongs, because we're in the section that is related only to county buildings, right? Or county, and in fact, this is very related to the climate action plans. Maybe this paragraph goes up.
Right. Yeah.
Connected to the climate action plan. Any case.
Okay. So we'll try to move that. Oh, I can look at it to see where it. Or do we need a kind of a separate section that is kind of embedded carbon? And then we can move, there was also the action about just buildings.
Well, it's just a very general strategy that we should use on climate change generally.
Yeah.
So wherever that comment fits best.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, obviously just noting that that's existing and new construction for embedded carbon.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's, I mean, there's carbon in everything, and we don't, when we kind of break out energy and that we did just, so it's kind of, it brings in another focus on priorities here is actually climate change is also reducing the overall carbon and what we purchase and what we throw away.
Well, also in your building materials too.
Right,
so
right, yeah.
It's all about concrete.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
mainly it's
yeah.
concrete.
Okay, so I think I can just kind of set up another element there that will capture that issue, and I can move the solid waste into there. Okay. Yeah, and then on this one, I did wanted to try to get a little bit more specific in terms of what we might accomplish. And I think this kind of runs a little bit in line with the idea of getting the commissions together on climate action is, also kind of thinking through and understanding that we have, what do we mean by climate justice within the Arlington context? And I think we've defined a couple of ways underneath, but again, it's that expanding our interactions with other groups to get something that's more community reflective. We've got a bill roll in there for you, Bill.
Looks good.
Okay. Okay. Good additions there. Yeah. Updating. Anything on these issues? Natural resources.
But, maybe looking forward a little bit, hoping that we get an outcome in December. Maybe the first sentence there ought to be implementation of the ambitious forest and natural resources plan.
Okay, yeah.
We're hoping that
That's it will be passed by the end of the year. You're right. Good catch on that one. Promote. How do we want to promote implementation?
Promote implementation, I think.
Yeah, right.
Of new plan.
Yeah, just take.
Yeah.
And maybe instead of will, let's say promote to protect. Either way, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a few edits on the next one, additions. It's kind of linking it a little bit with the previous section.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is it. Okay. I don't think we need to worry about the assignments. So, Rob, would you have time maybe working with, if somebody else want to work and just do that final look through it and we can approve it next month? But, just kind of look at specific verbs to make sure that we've got, something that's, we can come back to and say, here's what we've done, or here's how well we've done on our priorities.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody want to work with Rob on that?
Yeah, I'll
Whenever-
volunteer.
Okay, is Eric, okay. Great, thank you. Great, okay. And now kind of turn it over to, got Bill Eggers here. Happy to have him here to talk about what he's doing, what his priorities are, and hopefully he can give us some thoughts of what he just heard us talking about.
And how we're going to push him.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you again for having me tonight. Glad to be back with you all. It's been a couple months, so good to see you. I've had a number of conversations over several months with Joan, and we've been checking in on the work of the C2E2, and kind of pleasure to join in tonight's discussion on your work plan for 2024. It's really enlightening, kind of to hear the breadth of focus. It's aggressive. Let's be very clear. Nonetheless necessary with the kind of challenges we have before us with our climate crisis, with broader community sustainability, and so many other related issues. So thanks for letting me listen into that, and happy to discuss. I think one of the kind of key, I'd say, outcomes I'd love to have for tonight's discussion is just to hear how, based on your prioritization for 2024, so our work in the county, including my own work plan, how we can work together to effectuate kind of the outcomes that you all see on behalf of the broader Arlington community. So I'll talk here for just a little bit, just give a little bit of an update on the work going on, but then transition over to dialogue and kind of hear some of where we can find alignments and partnership and work together collectively towards, I think, what I would argue is kind of all of our goals, this similar goals across the board. So, as like, I think I last spoke to you late spring, have been spending a lot of time just as I've integrated into the organization, kind of meeting, frankly, all of the departments, diving down deeper into the organization, learning what exactly is kind of our priorities across the board. And frankly, because we know this is an all of government, all of community kind of effort is to really get a better sense across the organization of kind of what is all going on. And since we live in a relationship-based business, by and large, to really start to kind of get those, build those relationships across the organization. It's also to say, because effectuating change includes engaging more broadly across the community, it's really building those community partnerships as well. And so much like the C2E2 or many of your peer commissions, it's also to say community organizations are private institutions, private corporations, and so many others are really learning more about the interests, the opportunities, and where there's alignments for collaboration and partnership and working together to address our broader climate action goals. One thing I will say is, insofar as working to kind of create this position, and I think this is just to maybe set some boundaries for you all, is to note that I think much unlike what I think the original, I guess, envision for the position was to have a little bit more kind of direct operational control. I'll just be upfront and say that, much of the work of this position really is aligned with kind of a soft power approach, working across and working in partnership with our partners, as opposed to having any immediate decision authority. That's really left to our county manager and to the county board. And so just to be upfront and transparent, a lot of my work really has to rely on building strong relationships and partnerships, and leveraging, again, kind of soft power techniques in order to effectuate change across the organization, and relying on coordination and collaboration and willingness across the organization, based on building those relationships over time to really kind of collectively bring the organization and the community forward in addressing our climate action outcomes. So with that said, just right now, after having really done a strong, I would say, listening tour across a lot of the priorities, let's give you some of the highlights of where some of the focus is right now, working with our county manager and our county board to really clearly outline work plan details and kind of what are metrics of success and who are the necessary partners that we need to bring to the table in order to kind of execute against our work plan. But just more fully putting together and kind of putting up, I guess, a public presence on the Office of Climate Policy and Coordination. I mean, nothing that's, I think, lost on you, but having kind of a clear presence for the community to rely on as a point of interface is really important to acknowledge. It's the position in the county manager's office and its role to support broader collaboration and coordination across the county organization and community. Second, and this will, after the first of the calendar year, kind of a Q1, so January, February-ish timeframe. Many are familiar with the Community Energy Plan having recommended action to establish our intercommunity or intercounty climate resiliency and energy working group, which is really at the department director level and our senior leadership level, bringing together that coordinating group, really to effectuate three things, at least in the immediate term. One is bringing the why to all county agencies. Why is our coordinated kind of action around climate important to not only the work that DES is doing or DPR is doing, but that of our public safety departments, that of our health and human services, our libraries, our economic development, bringing which constant or a consistent, I guess, say definition and reason for why all of our agencies collectively have a role to play in our broader climate action work. What that second is bringing education and capacity building. How do each, not only the why, but how does each one of our departments, services that they deliver on behalf of the community actually relate back to our climate action work? And we have much of that, outlined within the Community Energy Plan, for example, as many know, in the roadmap, clear identification of various departments, but really bringing those ties clearly to the forefront of our departments and their work plans, and making sure that it's clear to our senior and executive leadership how all of our priorities align with our departmental work plans and the services we provide. It's also then to say beyond that is how do we bring kind of the systems that we have available, from everything working on procurement to our budget, as you note, and how do we bring further kind of the forward climate action within kind of how we make decisions around, again, purchasing, or how we make decisions within our budget. If nothing else, just to highlight that, dollar spent has some positive or negative impact on our climate action work, and bringing kind of lens and tools to bear and evaluating our budgets and whatnot to that accord. And so looking forward to bringing together the senior leadership of the county to have those discussions on the why, what are the connections, and then what are the ways that we approach our business to align with our broader climate action and sustainability goals. Some other work external, we talk about whole of community, a lot of exciting opportunity for us. Well, I'm not able to kind of release any details just yet. I would just say that working with a few of our community partners and some of our corporations and their corporate social responsibility teams are kind of in discussions around where we find alignments. Many of our corporations have, for whatever purpose, be it positive social media or positive media presence, but be it a function of their own business model, have alignments with county goals, and how do we find ways to partner and work together to effectuate change. It's also with our institutions. We partner with many of our academic institutions here in Arlington, whether it be projects and the work that OSIM and AIR are doing, partnering with many, George Mason and others. But how do we, as organizations, also align our priorities and find ways to kind of work on community-based goals and community outcomes, kind of when it comes to our organizational presence, not just via kind of, say, academic services that we provide. So really, really exciting opportunity before us on that front as well. Some other, areas of particular focus is supporting and amplifying. We've used these words on our existing county programs. Demetra brought up the discussions around focusing on years 3 through 5 of the CEP. We have the FNRP that's coming to adoption in December. Our biophilic cities network participation and work, integrating biophilic cities principles in our developments. All of that is ways, this work is helping bring where there's cross-cutting needs to support county programs, advocate or provide kind of context in giving a climate lens, be able to lift those up and offer some ways to help our departments move forward on implementation, and where this position can leverage its role, its ability to work across the organization, seeking to kind of bring those forward as best possible too. There's a lot of opportunity not lost on any of you for our communications. In many of our departments, we have and engagement for that matter. Many of our departments, DES, DPR, have really strong communications and engagement teams. And at the county manager's level, we also have kind of a coordinating community or communications and public engagement team, and kind of working across those to help amplify messaging. And find ways to where those departments who aren't necessarily immediately focused on climate action, but as we noted before, have alignments with our broader climate action goals, being able to spread the message and make connection in our communications and in our public engagement initiatives. Also, not lost on you all is, we have forthcoming our next General Assembly session, whereby the county's legislative agenda, I believe it was published recently here, and many of our climate action goals and environmental goals are clearly stated, such that working with our legislative liaison to engage with our delegation, engage with other delegates and senators throughout the Commonwealth to articulate where we have kind of particular need for supporting legislative initiative. Certainly is an area of focus that we'll be addressing come the beginning of the calendar year. And then lastly, I'll just note that you bring up environmental justice and definition around environmental justice, climate justice, and ultimately the equity climate nexus. There's many kind of really exciting things going on this front. We do have prior definitions that have come about. I think Demetra made mention of some of the exciting work her team's doing with regards to a recent grant received through the EPA on environmental justice initiatives. It's also to say, as the county proceeds forward on its revisions to its comprehensive plan, many of the departments have already begun to come together to identify ways to bring equitable development into the context of the comprehensive plan, all its various chapters. And with that equitable development kind of in consideration, being very clear and precise about the definitions we use when it comes to climate justice, environmental justice, and broader equitable development principles. So look forward to kind of being a party, as well as many of my colleagues, party to that process to really advocate for, again, bringing forward the equity climate nexus work. So with that said, I'd love to open up the conversation tonight to talk more about some of your all's priorities and how we can work together. Before I kind of pass it over, I just wanted to note two things. One, I'd love to have a kind of more infrequent engagement with you all, and kind of put on the table a proposal of coming every other month, if you will, to have some check-in dialogue and have some kind of ways that we continue this engagement. The second is just to offer up that I really enjoyed having coffee with many of you and your peers, just to learn more about your priorities and have discussion, kind of breaking bread or having coffee, so to speak. And would love open up that opportunity to any of you. Please feel free to reach out. Happy to grab a cup of joe and have some discussions and learn more about your work and how we can partner together. So with that said, I'll pass it back over to Joan and look forward to the conversation.
Joan, you're muted.
Joan, are you there?
Sorry about that. Yeah, anybody have, questions or comments that they want to make? You can kind of raise your hand or just jump right in. One thing I was kind of thinking of, you had mentioned the budget, and since we're kind of getting into that, is, what are some of your observations in terms of what we're looking at for the next budget year?
Well, I'm going to be pretty blunt that right now, so the county manager has put forward a request to all departments to reduce their or propose their budgets with a 7% reduction over fiscal year 24. So fairly significant decrease. What that looks like, what that means is yet to be determined right now. Both the county manager's office and the board are kind of learning more as kind of the picture of what the budget situation will look like unfolds. But just to say that there are going to be, at least as is of current, some considerations and choices that we're going to have to make just given kind of current budget outlooks.
So within the context of that budget, what kinds of things are you thinking of that we really can work the climate issues? What are the leverages? What are the opportunities we have?
Yeah, I mean, I think let me just start on one side to say, I think there's an opportunity with you have right now the FNRP being passed, being adopted here in the next month, and I think there will be some potential interest for taking kind of the FNRP into consideration, particularly as kind of it builds its momentum. So certainly, that there's an operating budget piece of that, but there's also a CIP. The CIP would come kind of at a later point in time, but where there might be opportunity to support the FNRP's implementation, is certainly something that might be an opportunity or interest to this commission. With that, I said, I've spoken to a number of community groups, and frankly, I would just, as part of my broader experience around building and working within local government kind of budget development and advocacy, I would say that while we know that the universe of potential investments is large, it really narrowing down to kind of one or two strategic guidance areas of providing advocacy is probably really important to consider, as opposed to kind of taking a shotgun approach, so to speak. So just to kind of put that out there, as you think about priorities, it's really narrowing down what are your kind of impact points with that. I know, and I have some insight into this, but frankly, it's very, very high level, and that is, certainly within supporting kind of the DES and investments in our facilities where there's opportunity to do so. That's certainly more oriented towards a CIP, but there may be pay-go opportunities that come about in the budget to take into consideration. And certainly maybe Demetra or Rich can speak to some of the specific ways they may be focusing in DES about putting forward proposals for investment in our facilities. So they would have to, be more attuned to that. They are more attuned to that than I am on a day-to-day basis. Certainly, I think those are some of the kind of immediate, most immediate areas of focus I have at the moment. I have not seen kind of the start of any of the budget submissions coming in. So in order to kind of articulate where departments are thinking, I don't have a full purview on that just yet. So that's certainly something that we may be able to come back to you and have some more thoughtful discussion once we have more information coming forward by way of our departments and agencies.
Yeah. What about in terms of, because there is a lot of money out there, and to do some of the kind of changes that we want, federal funding in that. And then the other thing is some of these things may not necessarily cost that much, or in the long term could actually save. Mm-hmm. So how, kind of what kind of opportunities there are, say, is, well, if we do it this way, we can actually in the long term get a lot more gains, or we can take advantage of these credits or these, grant opportunities.
Right. Is that a statement or a question? Sorry.
Kind of both. Yeah. Is that one way of approaching the issue?
I mean, I will say in my experience, that is one way of approaching the issue. To be quite fair, and I don't have a kind of a deep window into, for example, our facility planning process as of yet. So I can't give you a clear understanding if what is currently underway. I mean, that's certainly something that Demetra or Rich could elaborate on more so than I could at this point in time. I do know that as of right now, utilizing I believe the decarbonization tool that you all have been shown over the summer, and utilizing that as a means of understanding where investment opportunities may lie and phasing and whatnot for our own public facilities is certainly kind of a thoughtful and strategic approach to some of those investments. What those specific investments are for every single facility, I don't have that particular kind of lens or awareness at this point in time.
Kevin.
Okay, I think I'm finally off mute. I appreciate the comments. I mean, the entire presentation very much. But you had mentioned one thing about not trying to take a shotgun approach, that you got to focus on priorities. And I understand that, in that if you have too many big battles, you can lose them all. If you're going to have big battles, you got to focus on one big battle at a time. I get that. But I think it's really important because with the climate crisis we face, all these things have to be done, and they all have to be done simultaneously. That it's important to not be so narrowly focused on big priorities that you lose the easy wins. There's a lot of things that the county does, that the public does, that the county can influence, that are really dumb, are really not a huge shift maybe to achieve a victory. And it's important not to be so entirely focused on the big fights that you can't take the easy wins that maybe don't take a lot of resources to go take care of. And I'm talking about things like, dealing with grass cutting, which is a huge, emissions source, but yet is an easy fix, relatively speaking, compared to big fights. And we may have already fixed that in the county. I forget where we are on lawn mowing, but so it's important I think, to make sure that you have all of the different things that could be done in the sites, but not try to fight multiple big battles for the really hard tasks. That's my only, and that was very much a comment, not a question.
Yeah, I'll certainly take that as a comment, and I appreciate that. Just a note, I mean, I think in the context of organizational change, kind of change management, I think there is a mixture necessary. Number one. Number two is that, be clear, I'm only one person, and there is a lot of successes going on throughout the county, and certainly where there's opportunity to either take those as, and work through them to tweak them for small wins or take on bigger approaches. Certainly appreciate that it takes a variety of approaches. And I would just want to point out too that, you said it's all relatively speaking when we talk about changes. So relative actually may be a bigger initiative and effort than one might otherwise think. But that's certainly the area of focus too. So thank you.
And I think on that kind of perspective, it's also kind of thinking in terms of how you can engage and work with kind of departments to help them think through, what they might do that could actually save money, because they're all going to be kind of looking for things to cut. So, kind of digging deeper of, not spending money on something that really isn't necessary. And the other thing is that, there are ways of making arrangements where the county doesn't have to put money forward. I mean, we've got the PPA contract ready so that we can put solar in. I think APS has a similar one for energy efficiency. So, helping think about where are those mechanisms that the county can take advantage of. And I know even on geothermal, there are some companies now that are offering geothermal as a service. So they'll dig the well and they'll provide the service, the services from geothermal and pay a set fee.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there's numerous opportunities to leverage all sorts of forms of resources, financial or otherwise. They don't come without trade-offs, frankly. And so I think we as a county certainly can and have looked into many of these opportunities in the past. That's not to say that, there have been decisions made in the past that we have not elected to use maybe one or some forms of partnership opportunities to pursue investments. That's not to say that in the future there might not be opportunities, but again, they're not they don't come without trade-offs. They're not necessarily free, and so we do have to be thoughtful in how we potentially take advantage of them, and if they are consistent with kind of the county's visions for how to kind of both not only be responsible in a financial manner, but also achieve our climate action goals at the same time. So yeah, certainly is a plenty of opportunity. And I think, that's something we can review. And I know that there's been a lot of wisdom put into those opportunities in the past year, and, leveraging what we know and what the opportunity may be is certainly, something we can come back to and see what that might look like for us in the future.
Okay, does anybody got any other comments, questions, thoughts?
Yeah,
Joan, I also just wanted to note that Ryan Delaney has joined.
Oh, okay. Then we will quickly kind of move over to that.
Yeah. I just want to say too, I think you all stand as well. Let me just say two things. One is, Joan and I have had a number of conversations on how to bring together commissions such that you have the ability to spread your perspectives around the priorities of climate action and hear how to bring other commissions to collaborate with you all. Certainly an approach that has been taken here, within our JAG. There's other jurisdictions. One was mentioned earlier that has found some successes in doing so. And I highly encourage you all to take such approach, at least try or go down that path. And I know there's been some of that work already done, but continue to do so will be kind of a really strong way to kind of leverage each individual commission's kind of wisdom and strengths in order to bring together collaborative approaches to this work. That's one. The second part of it is that much of this, while there's much in the way of need of investment and action when it comes to changing systems to address climate action, it's also to say that there's much work to be done on communications, and you all being a voice for climate action across the community and all of your networks and your peers and your colleagues, et cetera, will be extraordinarily important to also leverage. And look forward to working with you all to kind of serve as vehicles for messaging into the community, to make awareness available on what climate action looks like for individual households and kind of up collectively as a community as a whole.
Great. Yeah, no, good thoughts. And actually, one thing coming back might be helpful to maybe if you can, a little bit of support on your hat in terms of getting this idea of commissions kind of meeting together and having, some sort of, can't call it a summit, but just have a joint meeting with, all the commissions, representatives of all the commissions to talk about, thinking about climate change within the perspective of what they're doing.
That's a great idea.
I think, coming from you, it might actually get a bit more traction than coming from me.
Yeah.
Well, certainly floating the idea through the board is, an opportunity. Myself, you all, Demetra, Rich, others all have that. We can all make those requests for that to happen.
And maybe I'll talk to Takis and others on that too. So kind of get a broad sense of this is a thing that we need to do. So Okay, and I think maybe planning on having you come back in, say, February when we're talking about the budget. That might be a good conversation.
Yeah, sounds
Okay.
good. And again, yeah, look forward to that discussion as well. Feel free to reach out. Let's grab coffee if you'd like to talk. Happy to do so.
Thank you very much. Hope you'll stay around for the remainder of our meeting.
Always,
Okay.
always like listening to Ryan. So look forward to it.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you, Ryan, for coming. Kind of we talked briefly about where we are, especially I think our big focus issue, as you know, was a kind of on the metrics and measures. So kind of just update us on key changes and particularly in those areas.
Sure. And thank you all for having me. I apologize. I don't have a slide deck or anything prepared. There may have been a miscommunication on my end, and I wasn't aware that there was a discussion outside of the letter writing on the agenda. So apologize for being late.
I think we talked about it when we talked, but that was so long ago.
Great. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So as you all know, the FNRP is in its request to advertise period. The request to advertise was approved by the board back in October at their October meeting. This is kind of our last round of community feedback before it goes to the board to be considered for adoption in December. I believe the key dates at the moment are the Planning Commission on the 4th and the board on December 16th, although the board agenda has not been finalized yet. So that may shift to the Tuesday meeting as we kind of progress through that process. That will be posted. So yeah, in terms of relevant changes since the October meeting, we're still in process with those edits. As I mentioned, some of you, I believe, were present at the Enerjag meeting earlier this month. But to address the comments and concerns that you all brought regarding metrics, I've focused in on providing some clarifications within strategic direction 4, which if you all, depending on how well versed in the table of contents you are, action 4.1 revolves around our inventory recommendations, from everything from tree canopy to flora, fauna, invasives, et cetera, and some of our implementation metrics. There's one particular action step in there, 4.1.4, which was amended between the summer and the October board meeting to really reflect the county's commitment to annual progress reporting, sort of on the model of the public spaces master plan, how we work through progress tracking and implementation reporting on with our the PSMP IAC, which is our implementation action committee, to really drive home the fact that we are committed to that reporting out, sharing data. As y'all may remember, the plan is really predicated on community action beyond just sort of government action and regulation. So felt like some of the points you all raised, particularly around being able to share the information out widely about what's being worked on, when, and how the progress is going, really dovetails with that approach. And we wanted to make it really clear that we were committed not only to sort of annual reporting on the model of some of our other comp plan elements, but that there are certain elements within that are, beyond the annual reporting, reflecting back out on some of our key metrics like tree canopy progress and things of that nature. There's a suggestion in there now to provide or examine the ability to provide a digital dashboard, a virtual dashboard that kind of helps track some of these things, not just in the context of FNRP implementation, but in the context of the broader sort of environmental management that DPR in particular handles. So our urban forestry program, our invasives management, things of that nature, updates to our natural lands mapping and things like that. So without, as I said before, we're still in the editing period, so this language is not final yet. Otherwise, I would just be able to share sort of a more formal, here's what it used to say, here's what we have changed. But that's really where that, where we're trying to reflect what we discussed terms of your all's last letter and the conversation that Chair McIntyre and I had I believe, last month, middle of last month. So really trying to take that commitment to annual reporting, progress tracking, and bringing the community into that conversation to heart, and making it very clear that I think what we did last time around, just for those of you who are really deep in the weeds here, was that we changed the headline of that action step, of that recommendation, to report annually on implementation progress. Previously, it had been an action focused more narrowly on tracking our tree canopy and reporting out to the board. Wanted to change and add to the supporting text to make clear that we're talking not just about tree canopy, one of the aspects that the plan deals with, but the sort of whole billet of recommendations that are covered in the plan and its implementation framework as an appendix. So hopefully that's a little bit of a helpful encapsulation of the sort of the change that I think is most responsive to your all's direct comments. I will say some of the other things that we're doing as we kind of prepare the final draft are enhancing the graphics and the layout. There's a lot of, and to be quite honest, quite a few typos and mistakes along the way. So we are cleaning the draft up to make sure that it reads a little bit better. Emphasizing this policy point that I just made, and also happily able to remove one of our recommendations that was to amend the weed ordinance to facilitate native plantings and manage natural landscapes on private property, to reflect a sidebar showing that, hey, we accomplished this already. This is a great step forward on implementation. So Chair McIntyre, I hope that's a helpful encapsulation, but I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all may have.
Yeah, no, I think that's very useful. It just kind of, realizing that, obviously this is going to be a work in progress, but, getting that firmer commitment of, tracking metrics, and that will be helpful. Anybody have questions or thoughts or comments? We can, if we want to, change the just and walk through the letter that David drafted earlier. I apologize for getting it out a little bit late, but it's pretty short.
It was nice and short.
Yeah. Jenny, you want to bring
And
that
positive.
up? Yes. Yeah. No, and I think honestly, this is one of the better plans that the county's produced that we've worked on. And I think, it's got a lot of promise. Okay, just a little larger. There you go. A little bit more. Good. That's great. But, I think since we're often fairly critical, it's nice to have something that's mostly a positive.
I certainly appreciate it.
There you guys. Well, it's been a long time coming, so, and, brought up good public engagement and really actually responsiveness to what comments have been made. I think it's a much better draft than the first one we saw.
And Joan suggested short, and I think that at this stage in the process, that's really helpful. I think the other commissions are responding as well. And at this last stage, my own feeling was that we really want to show our support and acknowledge the fact that that implementation is going to be a challenge for everyone, and but an exciting challenge. And I didn't want to include details of things that we might have liked to have seen different. I think that overall, this has been a terrific effort, and I think we should view it as a success and as a real important guide for the future. Having said that, there's no pride of ownership in any of these words here. So anybody wants to do something, that'd be fine.
Any comments on the first paragraph? Second paragraph?
Got some sound effects going on.
Apologize. My dog is having a drink.
Oh, that's what it is. Oh my gosh, that's cute.
Scroll and final paragraph. Right. Have a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
A second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Okay, then that passes. Got that done. So should we change to, switch to the zero waste plan letter?
Sure. And I'm
take
afraid,
it in.
folks, this one is longer. Joan, how do you want to do it? Just scroll through it?
Yeah,
what we
just-
tried to do
just-
is,
yeah.
and thanks very much to Elizabeth and Joan for helping. It was a collective effort.
Yeah.
But highlight in bold categories what, you know, the key recommendation is. We tried to phrase as recommendations.
Yeah. And I'll look at too, we probably want to figure out who to send it to within the Department of the Solid Waste Bureau, or just
Well,
similar that we did.
I have Eric on as CC.
Yeah, yeah, but whether we send it to Eric and then CC the county board, just for.
Oh, the cat.
Yeah, I think that we've done that before with drafts before but.
Oh, Joan, okay, so I don't recall ever having done that before. So
Yeah.
Sharing it with Eric before we send it to the board?
No, we'll send it to the board, but we CC them, but address it to county staff that's working on the plan.
Yeah.
Just, and the CC is just to give the county board members a heads up of kind of concerns that we have, because this isn't going to go before the county board formally until April or May. Although they did have a work session on it a few weeks ago.
The plan, that is, the letter will go beforehand.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of process of how we kind of work this. So.
Do people have questions as we go? I realize some may not have read this long letter beforehand.
And if you haven't had a chance to look at the zero waste plan, any questions on that? And if there's any general comments on the letter. But otherwise, we can just go through it paragraph by paragraph and.
Could probably scroll a little faster.
You may want to bold, scroll back up a sec. A little bit.
Mhm.
The material donation and reuse.
Well, let's see. Yeah, I get it. Yep, that whole thing. And maybe the witch also, right?
Yeah.
This last paragraph refers to the legislative agenda.
Which, by the way, the county board actually did their request to advertise the legislation at the meeting last Tuesday. So, and they had actually dropped our suggestion of prioritizing extended producer responsibility and in other legislation. So I suggested they add that back in.
Do we know if they will? Did they say they would?
They didn't respond either way, really. So we'll see what happens, but we can make. I think there's another opportunity for a pitch later, but again, and I did mention that this was highlighted in the draft plan and really is something we should continue to list as a priority.
Correct.
Not so fast. Jenna?
I see a typo there, Joan, in that last bullet on the top page. Established should be in the present tense or future tense, establish.
Good eye.
Yeah. Should be.
This is the letter that never ends. Sorry, folks.
It's a big topic.
You know, and the
Yeah.
and the shame of it is the plan that was put together really does adequately address what they were asked to do. It's just that they weren't asked to do enough or take a big enough bite of this issue. So, you know, there's a part of me that hates being critical when they've really done a pretty comprehensive job of describing the existing programs and pushing them to do more. It's just that it started with recycling and it should have started with reduction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this is the same plan was with the transit strategic plan. This is the state mandated plan, and the state sets pretty specific directions in terms of what goes in there and how it should be done. So
and unambitious also.
Yeah, but again, but it the county can do more and they can format it a different way and still kind of meet this agenda.
Is there a way we should modify the tone to be less critical of the Solid Waste Bureau and rather be directing this to the county as let's ask more of the county staff to Elizabeth, you make a good point. I tried not to be too negative about the drafters, but it's going to land on them when they see it like a lead balloon.
Right.
Yeah, and we did try and construct a letter that makes suggestions for how the scope could be broadened and ways the plan could be improved, but maybe maybe if we make a subtle reframe to the board to direct SWB to consider a broader scope than is required by the state requirements, then we're aiming our comments at a more appropriate body as opposed to the staff, which really has done an excellent job in terms of the amount of work that's gone into this product.
Maybe there's a way of kind of phrasing the first part of it.
Yeah,
maybe go back and relook at that to just kind of commend them. I mean, and some of the things is the other challenge on this whole issue is, and they do acknowledge it in the plan, and and can be brought out, is that a lot of the fundamental sources of the problems that we're dealing with in waste management are out of the control of what the county can do in terms of, you've got all these industries that are putting out things that can't be recycled and they're generating so much waste and they're, but I think, it's kind of actually a better acknowledgement of that. is in kind of putting some of this information in context of the broader situation and infrastructure would actually, you know, kind of help. But again, I think the county board has given that direction because they said zero waste, but then zero waste gets defined just as diversion. Michaela?
Yeah, I was just thinking through this, and it seems so much of what we recycle really ends up in the trash. And wondering if it wouldn't make more sense to not throw everything together, valuable white office paper together with greasy plastic food packaging, for example, that ends up contaminating the whole thing, and concentrate more on the streams that make most sense, like aluminum cans, like collecting white office paper separately, and simplifying the process to make it harder to mess it up.
Yeah. And I think that actually the best way
is recycling and getting stuff out of their trash can. But the fact is, when you throw those plastic package away, whether it's a 1, 2, 5, 99% of it gets incinerated. So well, the letter mentions, it's greenwashing by the plastics industry.
It is.
And highlighting that more and saying, I don't think better compliance with recycling is necessarily going to be the answer.
Well, you got to reduce everything all along, particularly focused on, I think, food and plastics are probably the two most problematic things that are in the waste stream because of all the downstream.
I mean, people like to feel better, so they throw things in that shouldn't be in there, and just tightening up what we're allowed to throw in there.
Yeah, make it clear because.
Yeah. I think that they've tried often to simplify the instructions, but a lot of residents complain that, well, it's not, the guidance isn't specific enough for me to know whether I put this or this in the trash. Now, in the recycling, we can all go online and type in the name of the thing like milk carton and see where it's supposed to go, but most people are not going to take the time to do that. And
that's why I think don't even collect all that plastic crap. Because I think when people realize it's not being recycled, I think we had a big wake up call with the glass. And I think, you know, if the county would quit accepting plastic, single-use plastics, people are going to realize, oh, maybe I should be buying less of it. I mean, I don't buy yogurt.
That's kind of a drastic
because of the tiny containers. I don't know, just not.
Well, it really does change the overall point. The overall point of the letter is, you know, if you focus more, if we can focus more time and attention on the top tier of the waste hierarchy of, you know, reducing waste to start with.
Yeah, a good point.
Less would go into any of it.
Makes the decisions a little easier. Maybe
if I think, well, if I can recycle all this plastic stuff, well, you know, I feel better about buying it.
Well, that's the problem is everybody's patted themselves on the back that they throw things in the recycle bin.
Right. So
and therefore they've done their part, not realizing.
Wake up call. That stuff is not being recycled. It's being trashed. China doesn't want it anymore. Guess what? There's no.
I think more transparency about what actually happens is important.
Yeah. You know, maybe in terms of kind of getting back to, I think more is on that first paragraph, maybe 2 or 3 sentences. One of, you know, we commend the staff for doing, you know, a fairly comprehensive look at how to, you know, address the kind of waste management system to make sure that we're continuing and expanding. And then maybe something also an acknowledgement that this is an extremely challenging problem for which the county has only somewhat of some bit of control over what they can do. But, you know, but actually some of what it needs is actually a more honest look at how all this fits in within the broader system. Just to saying is like.
So maybe
So to acknowledge we can't recycle our way out of this problem.
Maybe what we need to suggest to the board directly is they give permission to the Solid Waste Management Bureau to be more transparent with Arlington residents about the reality of recycling, and therefore the need to be more thoughtful about consumption and waste.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember when the county quit accepting glass, but at the same time, it's okay to buy things in plastic, and people think that's really being recycled.
Yeah, and they got upset about the glass, or NPR did a program not too long ago, or actually in 2020, making the point that all this plastic that we're collecting and recycling isn't getting recycled. Mark.
But the problem is people think it is. And that's a big problem. Yeah.
That's a problem that I think this should address and somehow.
Yeah.
Because maybe some people would make different consumption choices. Others don't care.
Yeah.
Right. And it would just also simplify the recycling process if we don't have as many things intermingling. Like I remember back in the day, we had a paper separate from the other, and that was a way of keeping the paper more clean, I assume.
Okay.
How many
Mark,
barrels though?
Okay, Mark had something to say.
Mark. You're on mute, Mark.
Still muted.
He's working on it. Up above.
Okay?
Now, yes.
I used to work on this a lot at EPA. And I would just ask you, and this may not be helpful at all, but there's a very clear federal statute that has emphasized this point that you look first at source reduction before you go to recycling.
Yeah.
That's been on the books since the 1990s. And it is a centerpiece of a policy that's been around a long time, certainly at EPA's level, but also in other parts of the federal government. Now, I realize they're responding to a state requirement.
Yeah.
But if you could find some way of steering it to say, but in a broader context, it has been national policy since the 1990s to focus, first of all, on source reduction. Now, is that helpful? It may not be.
Well, it's actually in the plan.
It is true.
Is they do say is like, well, here's the hierarchy and this is what we follow. But, but then they continue, they kind of quickly go into, here's how we can have programs that will hopefully get people to recycle better.
Yeah, but the Pollution Prevention Act, which has been around since the 1990s, distinguishes recycling and say that's second tier.
Oh, yeah.
First tier is source reduction. And it's been like that for a long time. And most of federal policy has said that for a long time. I don't know if that's helpful. It may be poking them with something that is not helpful.
I think we did. I mean, that whole first paragraph that talked about waste reduction, that next section did mention that, they should be following the hierarchy, but they don't seem to be doing that.
Right.
So
and somehow they've got it wrong, the estimate of what potential diversion could happen. It's way too small, right?
The numbers don't quite seem to blind. Well, there's a whole bunch of problems with numbers, which the last section goes into a little bit. So basically, this is all built on numbers that aren't particularly good anyway.
Well, that's emissions. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, you might want to consider, when you talk about transparency, maybe looking at transparency of the emissions that are embedded even in recycling. So you
Yes.
don't discourage anybody from recycling if you try and put it out there as though, recycling is a partial fraud or something. It might chill anybody's impulse to recycle. So maybe if it's just going towards the reduction, and look at the greenhouse gas emissions that are embedded in that process and look at reducing those. Just a thought.
Yeah, well, I think, when we talk about greenhouse gases, we reflect, mostly we're talking about what's embedded in what's produced and then going into the trash.
But recycling, you've got the processes too. I mean, you've
Oh,
got
yeah,
the transport, the process, and everything else. Yeah.
And when you get to plastics, it seems to be almost as polluting to recycle as it is to make the stuff in the first place.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you take it from there, maybe it gets you to a better place where you want to go in a more productive fashion, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. And I think for the point of this process, really acknowledging the whole state of waste production and management, and how it's just so badly off kilter, and is what would help in terms of putting perspective on this waste plan, and what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, they're unlikely to use very frank language around that.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I think if our letter kind of upfront acknowledges, we know this is a difficult challenge.
Yeah.
Okay. Want to kind of scroll back, keep scrolling down again. Mark, and then, that section that we did deal with waste reduction.
Mm-hmm.
Does that kind of capture?
I'm not sure what I'm looking at here.
Let's scroll back up, Jenna. You're going a bit too fast. I don't.
And it's toward the beginning. It's the first category.
Yeah. Right there. Okay. The other the plan is for their projections, and again, it's kind of state mandate. Let's be cautious. Is they're expecting that per capita waste production will be the same over the 20 years that they're looking out, and rather than at least generating some scenarios of kind of where they could strive to get in terms of waste per capita.
I pushed back on that as part of committee deliberations, and they really want to stick with this because they say this is what the recent years level has been, and they want to be prepared to manage that. I think like the
that's
good.
And they can put that forward as a business as usual, and it probably meets what the state requires them to do. But and I suppose I wouldn't probably not take any time, but you could look at what kind of waste per capita is in different countries to see. I suspect it's lower in Europe or Japan or that, just to say here's developed countries that do much better. But it's I don't know that we want to go. Yeah, no, I would do that, but just again, it's got to be focused, and they do need to have some targets of where they would like to get to.
Well, I understand Eric and his team, like a good manager, he really wants not to be made responsible for things that he doesn't control, and people's consumption and waste behaviors are difficult
public
to control
education can deal with some of that, and then I think we tried to offer suggestions of here's concrete things that will actually reduce waste. that are not outside of the hands of the county to at least promote and encourage.
And if it's most difficult in multifamily situations, the recycling, I can understand how difficult that would be. Perhaps simplifying it towards just one thing, like aluminum cans, that's all we're taking. Nothing else goes in this bin.
Yeah.
Maybe you would get better compliance.
Yeah,
that's an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm.
Joan, what were you going to say?
Yeah, some is that might be, you know, kind of another suggestion is work with multifamily house our buildings to kind of figure ways of simplifying and making it easier to, rather than just talking about signage and saying that they have to have public education. Scroll down to.
I think we could add one sentence in that area. One possibility would be to start small with multifamily and build up as performance improves, something like that.
Yeah. I think that'd be better.
I think that's in the bulleted section, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, if we could get ideas, just so.
Those bullets that
keep going down.
I think she's going backwards.
There we go, right there,
right there. Or Joan, but you already have a multi-family bullet. Maybe you just add it to that one.
Okay, let's see what's it.
Is it work with a big green building? Okay, no, I may be wrong about that, but
yeah, I don't recall having one.
Oh, okay, you don't. You're right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So just another bullet on kind of work with multifamily housing to find ways of simplifying or streamlining recycling, so they can do it. So that at least they are better at doing it. Yeah, and we can massage some of those words.
Maybe put the sentence in red and then before it goes a little tweaking.
Yeah. We're kind of getting at the kind of glaring omissions of not actually thinking of this more broadly.
It kind of goes along with being honest about what really happens to the plastic stuff they're throwing. You know?
That's right. Yeah. And that's, I mean, you know, again, if we're kind of recognizing up front that there's so much out of their control, but, you know, just that honesty and transparency.
Yeah, and that could be built into the multifamily housing too.
Yeah.
With the education and the simplification.
It's a complex topic, really. It is. And
yeah. And, you know, when you're trying to do something and plan and you don't have so much control over those other things. But it's like, okay, let's just assume that there's going to be some action on some of these other things. What can we do here at home?
I mean, we did want to pass a zero waste resolution, and what motivated us to do that? Just to look good, or did we really mean it? And it was going on 9 years ago that we passed the resolution without doing anything about it. So it's about time to think about waste reduction.
Do we want to say something when we talk about waste reduction too, is that we should have some scenarios or targets that, show, kind of understand the importance of having a baseline business as usual for planning purposes. This plan should also include scenarios that would, kind of suggest or set aspirational goals for trying to reduce total waste.
Honestly, I think one sentence in the plan to say, this is the figure we're using for conservative planning purposes, but our sincere desire is to see the per capita waste amount decline over the period of this plan.
Yeah.
Or something to that effect. Because I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's important for them to set targets and then try to meet them, because it's a real big effort.
Yeah. Again, this is kind of aspirational, so not targets, but at least stress that, they're not really, that this is just baseline business as usual. And the idea is, and then, but, kind of recognizing that a lot of other things have to change that's outside of their control. But, so they can just focus on what they can actually do. So. Okay, and the last paragraph. Yeah, I mean, this whole issue about how they're collecting the data is just another thing they need to be honest about. If all this information we get on what's being recycled in multifamily housing is not reflective of what's actually happening, then that kind of getting to that 90% diversion rate is requires a lot more.
This is sadly, this came up in our last meeting when they were presenting, and it felt like an emperor has no clothes moment. Like, oh my gosh, actually our effective recycling rate is so much lower, even if it's better than many other communities in the state.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, they're all reporting the same thing, the same way.
Right.
Correct.
And since nobody's taking account to, once you've got badly contaminated recycling, we've got a lot of useless stuff. Might as well all just go in the trash. They'll collect the metal anyway, or in the waste incinerator.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is an honesty of let's understand what the situation is we're dealing with.
Okay.
So with those changes, plus we'll add a sentence on, highlighting that the holding, per capita waste is only, understand it for planning purposes, but suggest that they, stress that the goal is to actually reduce without necessarily setting a target, but just.
Yeah.
That maybe can be the kind of lead up onto the waste reduction section. Okay, I think. Okay, anybody have any other comments or thoughts? We will have chance to weigh in on this as well. Maybe it will improve the same way we saw with the forestry and natural resources plan.
Mm-hmm.
But this is actually probably much more complex as a problem, but we have a motion to approve.
I'll move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one passes. Thank you, Carrie and Elizabeth. Good, and so then we have the Gulf Branch. So, Kayla, if you want to walk us through any of that.
Apologize, I have a dog in the background.
So do I.
Yeah.
Hey, Michaela, later on in this letter, you referred to infrastructure, both capital and ongoing maintenance. And I was just curious what you were referring to.
Why don't we wait until we get to that and just go paragraph by paragraph?
Yeah, I'm just keying it up.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that the first, the beginning of the sentence? Yeah, okay. Wait, is that the beginning of the letter?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I think this one we'll figure out who we should send it to. Since it's not a board issue, but then we can CC the board for their, unless the other commissions are sending it to the board.
It should go to Jason Papacosma if it's to staff.
May I ask for a clarification here, Joan? I didn't think we ever sent letters. I thought our only letter sending was to the board because we advised the board.
Some of the for the forestry and natural resources with the first draft, I think we sent to the Parks and Rec department to Ryan, and then CC the.
Okay.
We would always CC the county board. I mean, it just, to me, it's more of a, let them know that there's, what we're thinking about, but leave it. But at this point, it's kind of just an interaction with us and in the department that's actually drafting the plan.
Okay. I mean, I might have had a little slightly different tone in the letter had I thought I was sending it to the Solid Waste Bureau. But
okay. Yeah.
In any case. So it should be labeled a draft, correct?
Yeah, I think so. They're still working on the plan. So they're getting community input.
No, what I mean is the letter is a draft for the letter that we will eventually send to the board. Sorry to be so process oriented, but.
Well, they were looking for feedback actually last Friday, and we got permission to extend that to our meeting.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I just was confused about the process.
Yeah.
Is there a term of art, Michaela, associated with credited? I wasn't sure I understood that.
Well, part of the reason for this project is getting credits under the MS4 system of reducing sedimentation in the bay. And my understanding is this is not measured directly, but through estimation. So part of the recommendation is to measure that directly, which will help inform future projects.
Okay. Can delete my comment.
This is David. We had a little exchange on that. I don't know. I'm still not wild about leading with that. I think it's a discredited rationale on their part, and I understand the value of not trying to say something about it right now, but I don't know.
I guess why I started with that is acknowledging their reason for doing the project. A, they've got sewer infrastructure, and B, this is how they're getting EPA credit for this. And
yeah, they're getting credit, even though, yeah.
And it's a flawed process, yes, agreed, but they're working with a structure that exists. So acknowledging that is where I chose to start, but.
Okay.
Given all of that, these are ways to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and instead of coming out and just saying it's like you're going about this all wrong, it's just like, yeah, you need to, we understand the importance of doing this.
Or we at least understand why. We understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's certainly true. And so the language about doing, prior work monitoring, I think, well, let's see how it reads towards the end. It's really important that we don't support. I don't know. It's important, I think, that we don't support regulations that are really counterproductive or just flat out wrong.
Right. I guess that's a separate issue for. That's a larger discussion, I think, than this project. And agreed.
In the last paragraph on the screen there, is there a suggestion that we're making about, what the nature of that capture process would be?
Basically looking at every and all possible avenues for capturing stormwater before it blows out our streams. And I think there's some untapped potential that the county chose not to pursue because of slight complications for each one of the branches. One branch, the neighbors didn't want anything impeding on their lawn that they use occasionally. Another one
they don't actually own.
They don't actually own, correct?
Yeah.
But,
yeah, that's the problem.
Neighbors often think they do.
Well, that's the problem with some of our parks is people that border on it all of a sudden think that that's part of their property and they dump things on it and
kids play there.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to say that, they don't use it, but it doesn't just belong to them. So to not utilize the potential to capture stormwater before it injures the stream because of that, I think it might help bolster that argument if commissions like ours raise it.
Yeah. I mean, if they're not capturing the existing stormwater, then they're going to have the erosion all over again.
And just with climate change bringing altered stormwater patterns, periods of drought and then flashy storms, that's only going to get worse. So,
the concern that was troubling me in that, and not so much for this letter, but just in terms of their policy going forward, is the sort of the Woodlawn Park issue, where they're proposing to. There's a proposal to do stormwater retention there, but it would be at the cost of a significant, important component of that park, the trees in the park, for example, and a lot of other park resources. Not so much the neighbors' use of the park, but the natural resources themselves. So it just catches my attention when we talk about using parklands for diverting stormwater.
Well, in this case, there's basically lawn areas that don't have trees.
Okay, so surface water.
Well, I'm not proposing cutting trees to capture stormwater.
Okay. Well, that was the proposal for Woodlawn.
Yeah, no, I think they will recognize what's meant here.
Okay, great.
So here, Demetra, where you ask about added infrastructure, with these natural channel design processes, they add plunge pools and boulders, and even the large elements that are supposed not to move end up shifting. And so the thought that using big boulders and riprap means you can just wipe your hands, call it done, and walk away is misguided.
Okay, because there may be some misunderstanding among staff, if you can just clarify that point, that'd be great.
I mean, it would be even better to remove the sewer infrastructure from the stream, but that's probably not feasible.
They did some great transportation planning in Arlington. They did not do great stormwater capacity and sanitary sewer strategy, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's probably region-wide, countrywide, I guess. So maybe for infrastructure, say, I don't know how to describe it, natural channel design infrastructure such as boulders.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Thank you.
Now we can.
It's kind of explained a little bit more in this lower paragraph.
Michaela, I wasn't in the room, but I know with Trib B, Donaldson Run Trib B, another problem with wooden infrastructure there. That was recommended, and an example was used for Albemarle County. The difference with Albemarle County is it's really relatively flat. It's around 5 to 7 times larger than we are, and its density and its development is a fraction of Arlington's. So they don't get those really intense high energy velocity from cloudburst storms that we do.
Because they don't have as much impervious surface.
Right.
Yeah, hence making capture prior to entering the stream even more important for us.
We've got elevation changes, and they simply, for obvious reasons, they didn't anticipate climate change, and there wasn't the benefit of real stormwater regulation back in the 1940s to 70s, when Arlington was really an overdrive on development.
Well, I think part of the point of this letter is also recognizing the transient nature of even the larger boulders. So yes, you put in these wooden low velocity inhibitors, they're going to move.
I think the boulders, I would double check with staff, because I remember from that historic storm on July 8th, 2019, we had to do a quick assessment of all the stream projects for purposes of making the application of FEMA for damages. And with things like Windy Run, which had a lot of boulders in it, there was, some scouring, but there wasn't displacement.
Okay, well, maybe boulder is the wrong word. Some of the mid-sized rocks did move, is my understanding.
Yeah, mid-sized ones will, particularly with an intense storm.
Yeah, why don't you just highlight that in red, and Michaela can work on just.
Or just say mid-sized boulders.
Medium boulders, kind of average boulders.
The point being, even with natural channel design, you're going to need some maintenance.
Yes, absolutely.
And so their reason for not using the wooden flow velocity inhibitors is, well, they're going to need maintenance. Well, yes, they will, but so will some of the rocks.
I had a question about, I think it's the last paragraph in the letter. Is that kind of a summary of the letter? It kind of reads like it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe just say either in summary or, you know, something that makes it clear that that's what you're doing there.
Like the essays you write in school, you kind of summarize at the very end.
Right. Okay.
Okay, anybody got any other comments or suggestions? Get a motion to approve?
So moved.
I move to approve.
Oh, okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then that passes, and I think we're done with most of our work. Does anybody have any updates? I'll actually just let people know that, you know, Doug wasn't able to make it tonight, but he's offered to, you know, take the lead on drafting a letter on the Art Zero emissions bus study, just to kind of capture our kind of assessments. And we'll have that for the December meeting. So if anybody wants to weigh in and reach out to him, or he'll reach out to you. I know number of us are quite interested in it. So anybody else have anything else? As I'd already mentioned, I did make a few comments on the legislative agenda, which was just the request to advertise. They'll have a meeting with the legislators probably in early December, and then it will be approved at their December board meeting. Again, they very succinctly and quite, you know, captured our key issues. The only two things they did was the one on the extended producer responsibility, and also suggested that going beyond on transportation of just restoring funds, which, yeah, obviously is important, but they should actually look at ways of increasing funding for transit and multi-mobility infrastructure, and actually really shifting the funding from, you know, what right now it's about 75% for highways and roads and 25%. And that should, ideally, it would be nice if they flipped that, but at least a 50-50 parity would, you know, get more money towards things that might actually reduce traffic. So, anybody else have anything else? What's going on? Okay. All right.
Noting that we're well over time.
Right, yeah. As kind of per usual, unfortunately. I don't know, the virtual meetings seem to go on longer too. But at least we don't have to drive home. Okay, everybody have a very great Thanksgiving. We'll see you on the 18th.
Thanks, everybody.
Are
Great
you going to make a
Thanksgiving.
motion to adjourn? I'm sorry, I'm being like Carrie now. I'm being fussy on process.
Don't
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
All right.
Second.
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Then we are
Thanksgiving.
adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Hey, y'all. Enjoy.
Thanks all.